What is up, everybody, and welcome to the first single episode review on the Pop Cult Cast channel. Today we're going to be talking about Wakanda or Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. But first, before we get into it, one, I want you guys to do all the YouTube stuff. Like the video, comment, subscribe, all that. Second, gotta check on my man Caleb. How you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm ready to talk about this movie because it is I'd say the most maybe not the most 50-50 Marvel movie ever, but it's definitely you either love it or you dislike it. I don't think people really hate it, but either dislike it. But first, I know you saw this movie in a different sort of medium, so I want you to tell me about how you viewed this movie.
So I didn't know that this is a thing for the viewers at home, but apparently you can watch films in 4D. So what this means is it's kind of like it's a gimmick. It really is. It's 3D plus. And the plus is your seat moves in a synchronized manner with the camera movements, well as like water sprayed on you. And there's these AC units from hell. So anytime like a character jumps and, they're free falling, they feel the wind in their face. Yeah, the thing blows on you. I bring a blanket to the movie theater. I like to be comfortable, right? This thing literally blew the blanket off into the air in the middle of the movie.
How many people were in there?
Oh, it was a packed house.
Oh shit!
There was no empty
seats. Just a blanket, just like whoosh in front of everybody. That's hilarious.
And I gotta say, man, watching an MCU film in this medium, it felt like I was living in the future. I was in 2052 and everybody else is back in 2022. It really made it awesome. Like it's a gimmick, yes. And there's parts where it's so annoying. It's like, could my chair stop moving? Like just because the camera's panning doesn't mean that I need to pan with it for this intimate scene. But during the action scenes, like even mundane things, like falling from the sky, we've seen that a million times, like a superhero's falling off a ship or like some type of spacecraft and then, going down. That's really mundane and boring. We've seen it, a million times, but to feel it, because the AC is blasting as your chair's like rocking around, it made it like exciting. So there was no dull moment in the film. Like your seat literally would not let you have a dull moment.
How much was the ticket for this sort of theater experience versus like a regular theater cost?
Oh, dude, it was expensive. We had to drive an hour and a half to the theater because it's only in the city.
Damn.
Like I'd imagine something like this is very unique. Like I'd never even heard of this until I got here. But it was like $30 a pop, bro.
Woo! Oh my goodness. So, was it so good that from now on you're going to be seeing like action movies in this 4D theater?
I would say, yeah. Like, that's the crazy thing. Yeah. Like, why wouldn't I? Like, why wouldn't I go see John Wick like this? Like, can you imagine?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Or this feels blasphemous because I hate these movies and what they become, but even Fast and the Furious.
I was just about to mention that. I was like, dude, Fast and Furious would go so hard in that theater, I bet.
I know. I would actually want to go see it again, like a Fast and the Furious movie in that medium. That's so crazy. Like, I think I found the secret to
enjoying that.
Movie theaters.
Oh, shit. I have a microphone. There you go. But yeah, I definitely want to. I'm trying to look at the nearest 4D movie near me, or movie theater near me, because I'm actually very convinced. Let's see.
Is there one in St. Louis? That'd be so cool if it was there and we just didn't know about it.
Right, because I've never heard of 4D movie theaters until you brought it up. I'll look at it later, but I did want to get into some general info for this movie. So, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever comes at a runtime of, I believe, 2 hours and 41 minutes. So it's a pretty long film. But Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was directed and written by Ryan Coogler of Black Panther 1, Creed, and Fruitvale Station fame. Movie stars Letitia Wright as Shuri, Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia, Denai Gurira as Okoye, Winston Duke as M'Baku, Angela Bassett as Ramonda, and Tanak Huerta as Namor, and many more. Also, if you guys didn't know, this is the last movie of Marvel's Phase 4 productions. And the synopsis goes as Queen Ramonda, Shuri, M'Baku, Okoye, and Dora Milaje fight to protect their nation from intervening world powers in the wake of King T'Challa's death. As the Wakandans strive to embrace their next chapter, the heroes must band together with Nakia and Everett Ross to forge a new path for their beloved kingdom. I almost forgot that Everett Ross is even in this film, which I'll get to later. But for the Pop Cult Cast reviews, I want to do a little different. So I want to start off with our ranking system. So if you guys don't know, it is double thumbs up for this movie is awesome. It's great. It's pretty much perfect. 1 thumbs up. It's good. Thumb to the side. It's kind of mid.
I'm doing this.
You doing that?
A little over halfway on the second hand. Like there was a lot I loved about this film. There was a lot that I just found so enjoyable.
Right. For me, I'm gonna have to go. I think I'm gonna have to say it's a pretty bad movie.
Okay, what?
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. Holy shit.
So actually, where do we go? So we'll go into what we liked first. Right. I'll start first. I think that this movie made for an incredible memorial film for Chadwick Boseman. I think that first, like, I forgot how long that was, but like first maybe 2-3 minutes of like Shuri, like, rush. And by the way, this is full spoiler, so if you guys didn't pick that up already, but Shuri like rushing to get like to fix her brother's I forgot what they said in the movie, but like some sort of disease or something, which they paid a lot of parallels to how he suffered in like real life. No one knew in Wakanda about what he had, and like they made it very apparent to make those parallels. But then like after that scene when like it's complete silence, and then like the traditional Marvel sort of thing starts to reel, and you see every like scene of Chadwick Boseman play out, man, like
it hits you right here.
That was the most. It felt so somber, and like you just start hearing like people sniffling in the back, like just start crying. I'm like, wow, this is hard.
Because it brought in like an actual moment of silence to the movie theater. Like they didn't have to do something gimmicky, like stop the film so a character can like face the screen, break the fourth wall, and say now a moment of silence for Chadwick Boseman. They did it organically, but it still had the same outcome and effect.
Other than that. Other things. Actually, I'll let you go second. Like, what did you like about this film?
Shuri.
Yeah. About it? Well, yeah. Go ahead.
I feel like she's the perfect, new Black Panther. I appreciate how they went about it with tying her to Killmonger. I thought that was a very interesting perspective to add to the dynamic that they had in the plot, which I felt was very realistic. Because if there was two non-colonized nations from Africa and South America, and both of these nations have been like keeping vibranium, a very valuable resource mineral, to themselves, the U.S. would be very interested in getting it by any means necessary. And I think that was, a very smart, realistic plot angle to go with. And Shuri tied directly into that with Killmonger. Like if she wanted to be vengeful as Namor was. And I really enjoyed that. Like, I thought it was cool.
See, I'm trying to, so I guess also while we're doing, the positives, I guess I kind of want to not counter, but I want to dive deeper into that. So you say like one of the strong points about this movie was that, realism with like, the independent countries having their own resources, all that, and then American, our Western civilization kind of forcing into that. Was that really played out too well in this film? Like, I feel like one of the things that I really did not like about this film was the whole like, American intervention, because I don't think it ever really went anywhere besides kind of messing up the pace of the film. Like you'll have something going on and then they'll cut to some random ass room. And then you have like, 3 white people in there just like talking, hey, Wakanda's doing this thing. And then just cuts back to Wakanda. And it's like, they outside of that scene where like they were mining in, the middle of the ocean, like there was no real conflict with that. So I think that for me, that more so just kind of interrupted everything. So it just like, I don't know what they want me to do here, but expanding on that point too, kind of jumping ahead in the movie's plot when what's it called? Namor was like, hey, we'll side with Wakandans for now, but until that point, that inevitable point when they start to turn against Wakanda, then I will like, I guess lash out if back at Wakanda. I think that's what his whole plan was. I mean, that's also another thing, which I'll go into, my dislikes about the movie, but Namor was just kind of like a C-list kind of Marvel villain for me.
I thought Namor had a really awesome introduction, but he's talking about how like the people on the surface are like these colonizers that come and kill you and do horrible things to take your resources. And what the film shows is literally the only person killing somebody over resource is him, like to keep it.
Yeah,
like that. I feel like was the downside. I know the film was already 3 hours, but we could have done more with like, if we want to make him almost kind of like an anti-hero, which I feel like is what they were going for. To some extent, you need to have the Americans actually do something treacherous, that makes it have like a moral dilemma where Wakanda truthfully cannot choose, like, well, do we fight with our brothers and sisters under the ocean, or do we fight with the Americans that, can be pretty bad? Like, what do we do? And no, the only thing that happened is like those poor miners, like those poor drillers got killed, like horribly under the ocean,
Exactly. And like, I think Namor, I think for all the setup he got, which I think was pretty solid, I do think Namor is pretty decent on a service level. But then when you go to his reason as to why he wants to take revenge on the world, it's just so like, it's so like mawkishly evil. Like, because what my interpretation of it is that, like, he comes back to his like his mother's home of growth or whatever, and he sees like the slave plantation, and like people just getting mistreated. So then he took that situation, and he just like, okay, well, the whole world needs to be punished for this. Was that the whole thing about that? Because that's what I got from it.
Yeah, I feel like he kind of had a similar motivation to like Killmonger. Like it felt like they were double tapping the beat. You really?
No, because I mean, here's the thing too. So, like I said before in the podcast, I'm pretty sure I said it. I don't like rewatching movies, so I'm kind of guessing of what Killmonger's whole thing was. But like, I remember the movie starting Black Panther, and like he's looking at this artifact, and he's just like, hey, like this is gonna be like really digging the recess in my mind, but like basically this whole thing is like we need to give resources to people in Black people in America. I think that's what his whole goal was. And like that is so tangibly like, okay, yes, like this, because it's true. Like Black people need some resources in America, especially like lower income neighborhoods. It's like that's so easy to attach to. Almost like I compare Black Panther 1 to just like a Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King story, where Black Panther is more of an MLK and Killmonger is more of a Malcolm X. It's just how, and like that explains very perfectly what you said in the film, when Shuri meets Killmonger again, and it's just like what do you say? He's like, you can either be like, you can get shit done as me, or you can be like your brother and like be civil with it. And I love that dynamic of her kind of swinging between the lines. But like, yeah, I think Killmonger is just such a very easy character. I wouldn't relate him to Thanos in terms of like a very complex character, but it's a evil sort of notion that you can say like, yes, I can see what you're doing here. Namor, on the other hand, is just like, bro, that is the most Disney Channel like kind of resolution to your problem here. What is killing everybody going to do because this one thing happened way back in the day? It's almost very like apparent to like sort of black and white thinking of today, that like just a bad person needs to punish because they're just bad. And it's like, you can't really get that nuance here because, hey, this thing happened way back in the day. And like, fast forward all this time now, it's just like, what is your beef? Like this movie just could have been so much stronger on Namor's point. But without me ranting, I want you to kind of chime in before I get too far.
No. I think it's interesting that you felt like you should corrected me on the motivations of Killmonger and over Namor. And I agree with you now. Like, I think that's a good point. Yeah, like I feel like Killmonger did have a little bit more of a three-dimensional bend. Like Namor didn't want to like, keep the vibranium so he could go up to the surface world and like take care of like indigenous people.
Right.
Such as himself. Like he specifically wanted his group of people that lived on the ocean to like maintain it. And he really did want to like, kill the entire world with Wakanda, like
right.
really did. Like he was thinking like mass genocide on untold levels. Like that was a very comic book villainy thing. It brings you
Yeah,
back to like old school like Superman villains or like James
exactly.
Bond villain stuff.
Right. And before we get too far on the negatives, I do want to come back to the positives. Something I did like about this movie, man, the Dora Milaje is so sick. Like, oh my, like that first initial scene when like they're sort of baiting the Americans into like getting into the ship to get the vibranium, whatever. And then like they like start to peer out of the darkness, and then like I forgot her other name, but like she was posing as one of the scientists. I think the Dora Milaje was probably the strong. Actually, no, I think objectively the strongest part of this film is Angela Bassett as Ramonda. Like the performance she gave in this film was so piercing that I was just like, dude, she's acting her butt off right now. She's kind of she carried the movie
So
for
she
me.
just is a really good actress. Like
That's
she's one of the best
right.
actresses like of all time. Like everybody knows at least one role that she's been in that's had some type of impact on you because she's delivered an amazing performance.
Right.
Like she's, one of the best. So I don't think you could expect anything less. I was very I guess you'd say upset that she died so unceremoniously, like literally
Right.
face down in the water. I felt like that was some like I kind of wanted Shuri to like just go down there and like kill that dude. Like I wanted to be like, yeah, go full Killmonger, no mercy. Like he dies and face down too. Like
right. I mean, and
that's how it rolls.
that's kind of what I expected. Well, did I really expect that at the end, the final end fight? Because I was just like, at that point, I was kind of checked out of the movie, man. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, this is kind of sucks.
Okay, we definitely need to talk about that final fight.
All right. Well, actually,
That was
before
the
yeah,
huge negative.
right.
Huge
Before we
negative.
get into that, I think so the Dora Milaje, I think that's my last positive thing.
You didn't like Ironheart at all?
I'll get to my negatives. So, do you have any other things that you liked about this film?
Um, I know it's so weird since I gave it like such a good review, but I feel like it just was good. Like it didn't do anything tremendously wrong. Like, and I feel like one of the things that also made it good for me is as an MCU fan, I feel like this really did save the overall narrative of the MCU. Like it felt like a lot of the other properties before this feel so disconnected, so otherworldly, and finally we're back on like planet Earth and like Earth has problems again. And that was like a huge breath of fresh air. Like I felt like I was watching an MCU movie from, 10 years ago, not over the past 2 years.
Yeah, 100%. I want to get into that, but that's gonna be like my start of my rant when I get into my negatives. So do you have any other thing that you found positive about this? Oh yeah, I also want to say I think the soundtrack is pretty on point. I don't think it's as good as Black Panther 1 soundtrack, but like I forgot what the song's name is, but when they were when Namor takes her down to I want to call it what's their village called? Where like they were doing this and stuff. I forgot what it's called. I almost want to call it Atlantis.
I forget what it's called. It's not called Atlantis. They
Okay.
specifically like said that's not what it is. But
Okay.
I forget the name of it. It starts with a T, doesn't it?
I forgot.
I can't
But
remember.
yeah, when they were going down to their spot, like the song that was playing there was so sick. Like I don't know, like I'm not a huge fan of sort of what's the genre that Bad Bunny's in?
Like reggaeton?
Yeah, reggaeton. I've never like sat there and listened to like a bunch of like music from that genre, but like man, that song got me like, okay, I need to get hip. I know that the whole Bad Bunny like sound is starting to really get popular, like almost sort of eclipsing like the biggest genres of today. So yeah, soundtrack was a banger. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like you can't have a Black Panther movie without a good soundtrack. Like the first one set the standard, like brought in Kendrick Lamar and he dropped an absolute banger. So you just have to keep it going.
Yeah.
I do want to say as a positive, I think Ironheart was a huge plus in the film for me. I think including her was a phenomenal decision. So we did have somebody that was the superhero in the room until Shuri took up that mantle. Because she comes in and the second she's introduced as a genius, like to parallel Tony Stark. So it's like finally we have like that new genius in the room. They have a few lines of dialogue that shows it. I think what's her name? Dominique Thorne. perfect for the role. I thought she was witty, funny, and I'm excited to see her as one of the leaders of the Avengers moving forward. And I think the suit for Ironheart was without a doubt chef's kiss.
It was pretty good.
It was perfect.
It was pretty good. Let me see. I do believe Ironheart was great in terms of presence, in terms of like comedic presence. I thought she was hilarious. I was in the theater bugging. It was yeah. She had her timing was very on point in terms of comedy, and that's something that a lot of people can sort of diss on Marvel right now, is that the comedy can be very like one tone, very one note, and it's like with Wakanda Forever, it kind of hits almost every time, almost. Sometimes they get a little too like, all right, let's tone it down a little bit, but yeah. Any more positives?
I think the pacing was good. Because even though it's a 2-hour, 45-minute movie, you know, it can drag at parts. It didn't feel 2 hours and 45 minutes. Like it felt, since it did feel longish at parts, it did feel like a 2-hour film. Like, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like so fast paced or perfectly paced that I can overlook the runtime. But a lot of the film, you know, like whisked right by. And I touched on it earlier, but the introduction to our enemies in this film, to the villains, like Ryan Coogler, please start directing horror films. Like, dude, that was awesome.
Yes,
that was awesome. Like, all I could think during that scene where they're underwater and they have no idea what's going on anymore, and his cohorts are like swimming around. Like, it made me think of, you know, some of the best tropes in like horror films. And that scene, whenever they start, like the sirens start getting people to jump off the ship, and how it played out was so cool. Like their heads coming out of the water and you see them from the distance, like not close up like some Pirates of the Caribbean thing. Like it's from a distance, so it's even creepier. Like I thought it was just perfect. So Ryan Coogler needs to get offers immediately from studios that say, hey, here's The Exorcist, remake this, or here's this well-known horror property. We would like you to get your hands on it and go nuts, because I think he would make an awesome horror film.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, because that was actually, I was definitely hooked on the movie at that point. Like that, it was so effective in the sense of like you start to hear like the little singing. It starts off very faint, and then like everything starts to like sort of go to hell. Like people start jumping off the ship, which is like such a eerie sight. Because like I don't know, they could have Marvel-fied it where like they start like, I don't know, make it more playfully jump, but like that was like a very like, I hate to say it, but like if you ever watched a video of like the 9/11 like, you know, building falling, like people just falling off of that and just how they just kind of jumped, it's just like it felt very real and almost like morbid sense. Like the way they jumped just like gave me like oof, like chills.
Yeah, it is totally morbid, because all you can think is like, wow, these guys don't even realize that they're just jumping off to drown themselves, or to be drowned by somebody. Like that's definitely spooky. I mean, who wants to drown?
Exactly, especially like at the dead of night, and it's just like and also another thing, talking about like the nighttime, like the way they shot when they were going down to see the vibranium, and like they started getting paid off one by one. That was pretty effective too. But like you know, sort of peering into my negatives a little bit, I do think I need to look this up. Do you remember what their people is called at all? Because now I'm completely drawing a blank. But like,
no, I'm drawing a blank too.
Okay, but I do think this movie was like one big litmus test for like if people are excited for what's it called, Avatar, fucking
The Way of Water.
It's like, yeah, just like you're sitting here like, is this is like an Avatar 2 like hype train a little bit, because like I don't know,
they were blue when they came out of the water too.
Yeah, I mean weren't they blue? Like I feel like they were blue like the whole time.
Yeah, they're blue the whole time. Like that was part of what the plant that they ingested did to them all.
And it's like it felt very odd, and like in a weird way that I was like, I could not stop thinking about Avatar. I don't know, I'm pretty sure they ran into that in the writer's room. Like, are we biting off a little bit of Avatar? And I was like, I think so a little bit. But yeah, that was one thing. Before I start heading more into negatives, any more positives? Because something like when I get into my negatives, you might have a positive after I say a negative.
I probably will, but I can't think of
Okay.
it off the top of my head right now.
All
Which
right.
is, it feels so weird that I gave it such a good review, and you're like pauses. I'm like, oh, I'm drawing a blank.
I mean,
Like,
hey,
what's the villain's called? Oh, I don't remember.
all right, let people. What's it called again? No, actually, but I think that's completely fine because like I mean, at the end of the day, it's really just a feeling. Like you know when you like a movie, even if you can't completely like articulate it yet, then it's like that's completely fine because you know the feeling that you had. But let me go into my little rant real quick. I'll start with the low hanging fruit, CGI. Let's talk about that real quick. Actually, it wasn't terrible the whole time. I'll say that it was very like you can see that while they're doing sort of like the TV shows kind of poorly, it was fair here. I think the one scene that we can all agree on was like it's a very kind of quick scene, but like Namor's like running off of like a bridge and like I'll maybe find a clip and put it in, but it looks very jarring. I was like, oh my God, what am I looking at here? It's like very low hanging fruit to start off with.
I think the CGI was a huge improvement from the first Black Panther.
Oh, right.
Because the first Black Panther had that god awful PlayStation 3 rendered fight scene, which if it wasn't Black Panther, it would have ruined the movie, in any other movie,
Yeah, that was definitely rough. But I think the biggest sin of this movie was that I think it was incredibly boring. I would almost like compare this to levels of boring as Eternals for me. I thought Eternals like up to now was like one of the most boring Marvel films. It might still be number one for me. I don't know.
Eternals is by far the most boring Marvel film
that
ever
movie
made.
was boring, but I think it still makes the same sense here in that because Namor never really gripped me, while this whole conflict never really gripped me, the way they continually doubled it down with continually like not making him an effective character is that like I'm just constantly sitting here like seeing how they're trying to really make Namor's like vengeance very like relatable, or like you can see why he's doing it, but it never happens. So I'm sitting there literally just like wanting that, but it just never comes. The action wasn't very I would say the action wasn't very compelling either, especially when we get to the ending or like the later half of the movie. What else? Actually, I saw that you had a reaction to me calling it boring. Like, is there anything you wanted to rebut that with? I like how this kind of turns.
Like, I understand that this is probably like a little bit more mature for a Marvel film, just because Chadwick Boseman's untimely death, left a huge hole in the MCU and in a lot of people's hearts. Truthfully, like as an actor, he played a lot of roles that a lot of people loved. In particular, he was the Black Panther. And I don't think they could have just gone with your typical like MCU, here's a villain, here's some jokes, here's your finale, move on to the next thing, because of that huge space left by Boseman. And so the film took itself significantly more serious. And I think that the dramatic impact was enough to keep me entertained the whole time. And I don't mean entertained in like a morbid sense. I mean that seeing like these characters, particularly Shuri, deal with the death of both her mother and brother in the same film, while also embracing tradition for other people's sake, like taking up the mantle, even though she didn't necessarily believe that it was necessary. She just wanted to save her brother. Like, I think it had an impact, and I could stick around for an hour and a half for that, but luckily it wasn't for an hour and a half that all that went on. We had a lot of action scenes here and there, that gave it its bloated 2.5 hour plus runtime.
Right.
But I wasn't bored. Also, I saw it in 4D, so how could it be bored? Right, my seats literally like
exactly. But just like talking about that, talking on that a little bit, like but yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the movie definitely commits to it not wanting to be that stereotypical Marvel film, and I appreciate it for that. However, like I really thought this movie could have been like in the beginning of it, I was like, this movie could be another Winter Soldier situation, where it kind of just diverts the whole thing of a Marvel like even superhero movie, and be like, okay, this is grounded, this is has a very emotional impact, and it's just a good film on its own without having to be an MCU film. Like Winter Soldier could have been titled anything else, because it could have been titled anything else, and it still had that same sort of effect on it, because it's the Marvel branding at that point of that movie isn't important to how great that movie is on its own.
Like I agree with you in the sense that this is a great movie on its own, and I feel like that's why I enjoyed it so much and I have such fondness for it. Because I think with this phase of MCU films and TV shows, you can definitely just be sitting there like, but this one I didn't feel that way. So that breath of fresh air really, kicked in the nostalgia for me that just let me propel through this film with a huge grin on my face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a huge grin. I was smiling pretty much the whole movie, dude.
And talking about that a little bit more. I think the one aspect of the movie where it does sort of fall into its Marvel sort of, formula is that I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but I think this movie tries too hard to dedicate itself to progressing the story forward. And what I mean by that is like the movie's called Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Chadwick Boseman is dead. Black Panther's dead. I don't think this movie needed to have another Black Panther just yet. I think this movie could have been called I don't know, Black Panther Dora Milaje. Or well, actually, I'll take that back. I think that's also another story they could have done before they could have done another Black Panther. I like the story, like the title for me really rings hard because Wakanda Forever. Why couldn't this have just been a story of like Wakanda facing that adversity, saying like, okay, our king is dead. Like maybe like start the movie like they're divided and like the tribes are sort of like the clash, and then Namor comes in and they really have to start like working together and go above just like a king, even for like how much Black Panther means to the people, like being Wakandans. Make that be the power of the film versus hey, we need another Black Panther and hey, we'll just dump it on Shuri and then after credits, hey, like Chadwick Boseman Black Panther has a kid, he'll be Black Panther someday.
Yeah, that's totally why they did that. They said, hey, like it almost felt like, I don't know, it kind of felt like it took away from Shuri a little bit because it was like they literally made her Black Panther to say, hey, her time is coming, 10 years.
Yeah.
She's got 10 years.
No. It's like she has one time skip. And then like we'll go into like another Black Panther. It's like, and it makes me mad because like, if y'all are gonna get off of that plot point so fast, why even do it in the first place? I mean, because first of all, like I'm pretty sure maybe actually your theater might have been lit because of the moving seats and like the air, but like when Shuri did like the drop out of the ship and like boom and like pan up to her the new outfit, like that theater was dead. Like I didn't hear a single clap. I didn't hear like woo. Like I didn't hear a single cheer. Like the movie, like or that scene was very anticlimactic. I'm like, and I don't really blame them for it because it never really feels like a momentous occasion. Like in my opinion, and one of the things that I think would have made this movie a perfect 10. And I've been telling people about this. They're like what? Why would? But like, and we talked about in the beginning of this review. But like Angela Bassett is like so strong in presence. For me, if I would have been directing and writing this movie, I would have just killed Shuri as well.
Oh my God.
But I think the emotional weight of a mother losing both children, and she's just like, F it, I'll be the Black Panther as Queen Ramonda, and that would be so sick. Oh, like I just imagine in my head and like that powerful like monologue that she had in the movie where she's like, I lost my son, and like Wakanda is like in this very dire situation. It's like that is hard hitting. So why would you kill off Angela Bassett? Like I'm talking, and she's like, in my opinion, she's on like a level of like emotional weight as like a Robert Downey Jr., a Chris Evans. Like I feel like she could be she could have been a very like hard hitting part of the MCU moving forward. But like, I mean, I can already see in like what's it called? Just like talking to each other and be like, I can see Angela Bassett saying like, I'm not trying to be a superhero. Like, I don't really want to go through the next 10 years, like doing all this work. And that's completely like fine. But like, yeah, like why use your strong assets? Like, are we going to sit up here and say like, Shuri was like a super strong part of Black Panther 1? Because, and that's also another critique I have is that I feel like Wakanda Forever is really just a story built on side characters that never got that shine in Black Panther 1. So like why like I
Well,
just
she was definitely the comedic relief in the first one, but she was
okay.
funny. And watching the first one, like I liked her character, and so giving her the emotional weight in this one, I feel like allowed her to ascend to that like mantle of becoming the Black Panther. Like, I feel like they worked it into this film really well because I think you're 100% correct in saying like the side characters had to step up. And I think that's just like the tragedy of Boseman's passing, like that's
Yeah.
probably what the cast had to look at each other and say, hey, like the star is gone. If we want to make this film work, we all have to step up and, find a way to make it work. And I think the, cast and director most certainly did that. I kind of agree with you with Angela Bassett dying just because I feel like the unceremonious death
Yeah, it
just
was
did
so
not
yeah.
that shot of her just like laying in the water. Like she could have like it looked like she could have crawled out, like just
Right, just
barely,
there, right.
life barely escaped her. Like that does not sit well with me. But I think that's because, it's probably a good thing because it means I cared about the character and
Mm-hmm.
that death did have a weight for, because like think about like if we had an MCU movie and that's how Captain America died, you'd be upset. And that's because
Right.
you care about Captain America. And that's exactly why, I'm upset in that way. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that just because Angela Bassett gave such an amazing performance, it took away anything from Wright's performance as Shuri and the development the character had as
Mm-hmm.
Shuri.
And actually, while we're on Shuri becoming, the Black Panther, let's talk about a little bit about Ironheart. I,
Hughes
um,
Graham.
I almost wish she wasn't even in this movie. I think for some, like, I feel like she was in there because her whole plot point of being in the movie is that she created this, go ahead.
Can we just talk about the fact that Wakanda, a sovereign nation, came to the U.S. and abducted a U.S. citizen? Like, can we just
Right.
acknowledge that happened?
I mean, yeah.
Like, when I was sitting there watching that in the theater, I was like, oh shit, no way. Like, the Americans think that they attacked, like, one of their ships that Wakandans did.
Mm.
And what they're doing is they are literally going to abduct the scientist. Something that makes them look incredibly guilty, and not only that, like I'm sure violates like
Hella
international laws and
laws.
some
Right.
like there's
A
got to
whole
be.
list of laws they just broke.
And it was so casual because like the Wakandans are super powerful, so like they really could run the whole show on the planet if they wanted to. Like truthfully, they could with their technology like being so advanced, and like they could get away doing whatever they wanted to, and they acted like it when they got back. Like nobody acknowledged that they just committed like this major international crime. Of course, I think like the big thing that they were upset about is that Shuri ended up getting abducted
Yeah.
in the
Mm.
process.
But
But it's still though, it cracked me up.
yeah. Like yeah, it's just I for some reason I feel like Riri Williams just felt very shoehorned in here. I think actually she would have I think she would have served a better purpose in like the upcoming project called Armor Wars, where it's like, yeah, why not stick her in that versus Wakanda Forever, where like her entire plot point was basically like, oh, the scientists created this machine that did this one thing to vibranium, or we was able to locate it. Now we got to find her was it like to protect her, but also capture her for whatever. I don't know. It's very just like we need to put Riri Williams in here, just plant that seed. We need to do it right now. And it's like that's what I'm talking about when this movie falls into its MCU isms, where it could have been this really good film, but like you're trying to do a lot of setup here for whatever reason. When it like going back to, I think this movie would have been better if it didn't have to be a Black Panther film. You know what I mean? Like,
So that's the second time you mentioned that, and I can't help but think like maybe it could have worked. Like imagine if it wasn't called Black Panther Wakanda
100%.
Forever, it was just called Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
And it dealt with the fallout of T'Challa's death.
Mm-hmm.
That it still could have been more or less the exact same film, and they could have been a little bit more reserved with Namor, like not made him go all out and declare like war and the Wakandans and fight. Save that to later because I think they're setting up Vibranium Wars.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that Dominique Thorne was totally shoehorned into this film because there wasn't a Black Panther wasn't there until like halfway or more through the film. Like there wasn't a Black Panther, so there had to be some type of superhero, somebody that could don a suit or something to that degree. But I also think that maybe it's going to work better having her introduced now, so we don't have to go through a whole hero origin story in Armor Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like whenever you don't have anybody that's donning one of the suits in this film until halfway through, you most certainly do have the time to introduce her.
Yeah.
And I can't hate it. I feel like I really enjoyed Dominic Thorne being in the film as Ironheart. It was a huge positive of the film for me. I've been looking forward to Ironheart for, like, it feels like 5 years now. How long has it been since Robert Downey Jr. died in Avengers?
Was it 2018?
Yeah, it's been 4 years. So I've been, aching for somebody to take up that mantle. It's kind of funny that none of us ever considered War Machine.
Right.
So by taking the mantle, it's just like, nah, Ironheart will come out eventually, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah, wow, that is kind of
Poor
crazy.
Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle gets no respect.
And I also really appreciate that, like, her inclusion being like the obvious, mantle. Well, she's not. Here's the thing: Ironheart is like a pseudo mantle to Iron Man, so it's like, yeah, it's fair. And I'm just glad that they didn't have to like berate Iron Man in this film, because I feel like a lot of the time when like a new superhero takes up to come out the mantle, especially recently, where it's like. I remember She-Hulk said it, and She-Hulk was like, "All these men are like depressed or like have mommy issues or something." It's like you don't really have to disrespect. You don't have to do that. Just be your own character without having to like put down the other character to lift your character up. So I'm very glad they paid respect and just not even really mentioning Tony Stark here.
But there was no need to,
right?
None whatsoever.
But I don't know if this is how it is in the comics, but like I really would have loved if, like, I don't know, Tony Stark had this contingency plan of like, all right, let's scan the world for like the smartest minds or something. And then Riri Williams was like that top pick, and like, he sent the resources of Stark Industries to her and like that whole stuff. I think that like that's why I wish Armor Wars, I don't know if that's the whole story about Riri Williams, but like, have her set up in a way where she feels more important than just like, this random university student that built this machine, right? That's what I mean by I feel like her, our appearance is just kind of forced in there. But I'm trying to think of anything else.
I want to talk about a huge negative for me.
Go ahead.
That ending fight scene was horrible.
Oh yeah,
it got audible laughs. Okay, because there's that Namor's walking away, right? And Shuri in the Black Panther suit just does like a cartwheel backflip over his head to get in front of him. That was so lame. I can't even stress how lame that was. When people are like laughing, like, wow, that's kind of like a joke. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's not supposed to be funny. This is still like a dramatic part where she's going to determine if she's going to take his life or not and be like Killmonger or be more like T'Challa. But no, instead we get this like really cartoony backflip. That did not set well with me. And also, Namor is supposed to be stronger than the Hulk, right?
Dude, oh my god! Oh my goodness! That I was gonna bring it up, but like I thought it was just such like a niche point. But like, I don't know how much of like the word we're gonna have to take from M'Baku when he says like, "Oh, he's as powerful as the Hulk." But like, I mean, one, I would assume like a very close punch to your chest, M'Baku would have probably like murdered you if he had the same power as Hulk. Two is like you said, like, I mean, that final fight scene, like, bro, if you're like at least setting that seed in like the viewer's minds that he's as powerful as the Hulk, that final fight scene is just stupid then, because either A, the Black Panther suit, like, the whole flower they have to eat, whatever, grants the user the power of a Hulk. But like I don't think that's ever been really established. And like, yeah, it's like, I mean, I'm sorry, she would have been murdered in that final fight.
If she did get stabbed through the chest, and she just had plot armor, like literally.
Yeah. Well, was it the chest or was like her abdomen? I thought it was her abdomen.
Still, I don't think you walking that one off.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I really don't think a person should be walking that off.
And that's funny too, because like that final fight scene really just makes you ask more questions and like kind of makes you satisfied. Like, one, like, is the suit kind of saved her there? Was it the magical flower that saved her? Was it plot armor? Was it like what's happening?
I feel like the MCU studio heads came in and said, listen, we have greater plans for Namor, and we can't have the big fight scene with him just yet. Even though he's the main villain in this one, you can't have the real fight yet. We're saving him for, Vibranium Wars. which
Right.
it seems like we're most certainly like, steaming towards, like, full steam ahead. And, I got to say that makes so much sense for where the MCU is. Because if you think about, like, if you actually think about it in a lore sense, like, what are all these countries doing after, Thanos does the snap? How did you cope with the snap? But now it's like, how do you cope with the fact that there is a nation like the US in the MCU totally thought they were the most dominant country on planet Earth? They had superheroes, nobody else really did. And then Thanos shows up, messes things up, and now you also know about Wakanda having vibranium, and vibranium is literally gifting people from Mexico like eternal life, healing powers, the ability to live in water, and France brings it up at the beginning of the film, like you can make nuclear weapons out of vibranium. Like it is a huge deal. And I feel like in terms of narrative storytelling for the entire MCU and its lore, like I feel like that's the direction we're heading, and I'm excited for it. Like it feels so realistic in the sense like Falcon and the Winter Soldier did, right? Like you remember those villains from Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Oh yeah.
Like you kind of agreed with them. You're like, yeah, like there was no countries during the snap. Like everybody just kind of stopped being like sovereign states and all banded together as one big Earth. And then they were like, all right, back to factionalism and believing in countries again. Who would be like cool with that?
Actually,
I would be
hold on.
so mad.
Because like, I mean, I agree with you there, but I might have to actually disagree with you because like what are they called? The flag smashers, right?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, like thinking logistically is like, okay, so maybe you did so how many years was it for the snap? I forgot.
5.
5 years, okay. All right, so maybe I'll give him a little leeway because like maybe at that point you're like, man, these people are not going to come back. So like you really do set up like your whole life now, but like for them, I guess it's like for me it's like okay, like they're back. I mean, have the decency in your mind to be like, hey, like this isn't my place. So you have it back, sure. Like you don't have to start like a whole like war against the people to be like, hey, like I want my spot back. But just a little side tangent too. Like I really liked Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think that story was like really sick. Which, by the way, we're gonna be uploading MCU Phase 4 tier list very soon after you see this video. So, but yeah, that's all my qualms with the movie for sure. Like I said, I think the biggest sin was that the movie was kind of boring. Probably the second biggest sin was that I think they tried to what's the word? I had the word in my head. They tried too much, or they tried too hard to really dedicate to this film. If that makes sense. Like I feel like they didn't have to dedicate too much. Just use the Wakandan, nation as sort of your backdrop. Use it as like an extension of us, like really rooting for like this entire nation versus Namor and his people. But yeah, that's my final thoughts on the film.
Are you sure you don't want to like upgrade after hearing my thoughts on it from like thumb down to at least like this? Like this is the way that's a thumb down. So you think it is a bad movie?
I think this is a pretty bad movie. I don't even watch movies or rewatch movies right now, but I would probably never watch this movie again.
Oh, that's so crazy to me.
Did it change your opinion at all? Are you still sticking with where you were like?
Well, yeah, you definitely downgraded my enthusiasm a little bit because I'm realizing like you're like, what's the positives? And I was like, I got nothing, chief. I don't have anything. But I did enjoy, like you said, if you enjoyed a movie, you enjoyed it, and I did enjoy it.
Right.
And I feel like it reinvigorated excitement in the MCU for me.
Oh yeah,
and I feel like that was the most important thing by far because we were talking about it. I was getting a little worried that everything was kind of like falling apart there at the with the studio heads, and they didn't know what they were doing. Everything has been discombobulated since the snap,
right? And
which makes sense. Like that's a really hard thing to follow up is Endgame,
And while you're more optimistic, I think this was probably. So I said back in like maybe like episode 2, 3 of the podcast, like I was done with MCU, but like of course I'm not. I'm here. But I think this was probably the final nail in the coffin for me in terms of I probably won't see any more Marvel movies in theaters anymore. I think I'm kind of done with that. I feel like it's sort of just me kind of rebelling against like the MCU mentality. Like I'm sick of them feeling like I'm taken for granted or they're taking me for granted or whatever, But like I feel like they know that my ass is going to be in that seat. for every MCU movie, and I hate that. I don't. I need y'all to work for that. So like I guess for now, like going into Ant-Man Quantumania and even Guardians of the Galaxy, which is supposed to be a very emotional weighted film. I think I'm just gonna have to wait for Disney Plus release, to be honest. Like I'm really just done. And
I think that's fair because like movie tickets are expensive, and if you're gonna go to the cinema, you want like an experience that's unique and special. You know what I mean? Like you drop your $20-$30 that you end up spending ultimately there. And when some films in the theater are worth seeing over an MCU film, why wouldn't you pick the other film? You know what I mean? And I think that has been the case often during this phase. Like it felt like a lot of those films should have been just direct to Disney Plus films. I feel like I'll save it for the tier list. Okay. You'll see.
And like vice versa too. I think some of the Disney Plus shows should have been movies. Like why not? Yeah, why not make? Why not go full like 100% and make She-Hulk a 100% romantic comedy?
That would be so awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
That was so cool. But I'm not gonna say that I disliked the show. I did enjoy the show. I liked the format that it went with. But I definitely feel you. I feel like a She-Hulk film would have been awesome because I want a good Hulk film, and I'm gonna be honest. I don't think there's ever been a good Hulk film. I feel like they've all sucked. Yes, really bad actually.
Caleb, that actually made me hate you a little bit more.
Like hate me a little bit more, so there was some hate.
No, but like, wow. All right. Well, that's what. All right, that just spawned. We need to make an entire Marvel tier list at some point because I'm going to debate the hell out of you for the Incredible Hulk because that movie was a banger. Like I love that movie so much. What's homeboy's name? Yes, that movie is a banger. That final fight of that movie was easily like we don't have much Hulk content, but like the rage, like that's something that Hulk movie completely nails is like the rage inside of Hulk that the MCU now like completely butchered. Like just seeing that on screen and like I forgot his love interest name was, but like seeing that duality of like almost like kind of comparing it today. Wow, we're gonna hold you tangent, but like of like super hyper masculinity, like yes, I want to kill you, like super buff, strong guy versus like a very feminine, like calming nurturer for the Hulk to be like, okay, I'm not gonna like rip this guy's head apart with these chains. Like I love that movie so much in terms of like how the Hulk is represented. But yeah, that's my little love story for the Hulk real quick. But
I'll leave over the love story. I won't say anything else. But no, I didn't. I have not enjoyed a Hulk film. Like the first time I enjoyed the Hulk. Oh wow, this is gonna be crazy. But I didn't enjoy the Hulk until Avengers 2 as a character.
I don't think I ever enjoyed the MCU Hulk. To be honest, I think the MCU Hulk sucks. Like there's not a moment where I'm just like, dude, like I need to see this Hulk. And like at the end of She-Hulk, we get that kind of teaser of like, all right, we're gonna get this like a solo sort of Hulk movie with his son, but it's like they have a lot of work to do for a solo Hulk movie to really work. And I'm sure they're waiting for me. I guess they're having rights issues with the Hulk with I guess Fox or something, but we'll get that.
Oh my goodness, it's my least favorite thing to hear. I hate these companies arguing over the rights.
Yeah,
whenever the MCU is more important than their property rights.
Right.
Like that's just the truth. It's like when Sony was like, "Oh, we'll give us this or we won't give you Spider-Man." It's like somebody resurrect Stan Lee and have him start a lawsuit so we can just get all of these characters under one company.
Right.
So we don't have to deal with this drama of being like 30 movies into the MCU and then all of a sudden a very important character in Spider-Man just can't exist in it, which was like potentially something that could have happened, just 2 years ago. That's just not okay. Right. Like if I was Disney, I would be very bitter towards Sony for even making such a threat.
But yeah, guys, before we get into too many tangents, we'll probably get in a whole bunch of tangents in our tier list video, so catch that up. But like, yeah, that is our thoughts of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. We want to hear what you guys think. Comment down below. Tell us if you think this movie is mid, good, terrible. I think it's pretty bad. Caleb thinks it's pretty good. But yeah, we'll catch you next time in our next review. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.